to the joy of coding.
Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome to episode 129 of the Joy of Coding. My name's Mike Conley. We're gonna be hacking on Firefox stuff as per usual today. Let's get to it. All right. Here is the agenda. So today is February 21st, 2018. A reminder, no plan survives breakfast, even though there is kind of an agenda in front of me. I have no idea how far I'm going to get through it. I'm not, doing pre-planned writing of code, really. I'm kind of making it up as I go. I'm trying to capture software development in the raw. So none of this is like, oh, I have the answers pre-written or anything. I'm trying to make it up and solve things as I go. So you get to see me do that. So first of all, I want to mention that there is an episode guide to the Joy of Coding if you're curious about the 128 other episodes or so that we have. If you flip over to the episode guide, there's a list of links. Some of the episodes are missing. I don't know what the story is there, probably because they didn't air and then I just skipped the numbers for some reason. But I stopped doing that, I think, in 2017. And if you click on any of these links, usually it'll just be a link to the video and to the agenda, but some of them actually have like richer information, like some of the topics I cover, links to useful things. Let's see here. Yeah, links to code and just basic ideas of what I did during that episode. And what's really neat about the episode guide is that it's completely viewer driven. I haven't written a single one of those episode guides. Viewers just like you have been writing them, and that's great. And that's how I hope to continue it. Like, the episode guide is for viewers, and I'm hoping you can like help flesh it out with things that you find useful. So if you're curious or you want to contribute, maybe you have your own notes or you have some corrections or you want to add your own things or who knows, links, corrections, additional information, just send pull requests to the repository that the episode guide is hosted in on GitHub. And there are links in the agenda to do that, along with a guide for how to create a pull request if you're not sure how to do that. And this agenda is probably only useful if you can click on things. So the agenda. This agenda is something that you can have access to and click on links in. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's in the description. Check out the video description because there's a link to the agenda there. If you're watching this on Facebook Live, it's in a pinned comment down below. If you're watching this on Air Mozilla, it's in the additional links section down below. And if you're watching this on Twitch, well, you fine Twitch people, there's no place for me to put a link other than in the Twitch chat, so I'm putting that in the Twitch chat right now. There's the agenda. There's also a link in there on how you can rate the episode. So that's fill in a form and let me know what you thought of episode 129. Give me a sense of what things I could do better, what things you'd like to see more of, what things you'd like to see less of. I read everything that comes in and I use it to help shape the series. So please send me your ratings. Okay, so what are we doing today? Well, first of all, is everything working? Can you hear me? Yes. I think, is my mic gain too loud? Hopefully it's not. Hopefully it's not painful. And can you hear sounds? I think so. Yeah, all right. So everything is working and I'm recording. Thumbs up. So what are we working on today? Well, if you were around last week, you might recall dealing with this like promise document flush thing. And for some reason, this promise that we were creating in C++, even though it was being fulfilled, even though it was being resolved, wasn't allowing an asynchronous function to continue, to resume after it was awaiting on that promise. And I was struggling with that the entire episode. And I found out a couple of days later what was going on. And I think I write it in the bug. Oh, you know what? I didn't write it in the bug, but I wrote it in my notes. So there are notes if you click this part of the agenda, the notes for the bug. And I'll just go there. So the reason that the reason that the promise wasn't resuming the function properly was because of this code right here. I want to thank Array and Till for pointing me at this. So the global object that I was creating the promise with, because every promise has to be associated with a global, a JS global that it can you know, it's bound to the lifetime of that global. And the global I was attaching it to is actually the window that was being closed in the test. And with promises and the way their lifetimes work, if a global is dying, then we don't actually resume the asynchronous functions that might be waiting for it if the promise is attached to a global that is dying. And I did not know that. I also didn't know that I was attaching the promise to the closing Windows global. I was trying to call or attach it to the caller's global, because that's where I think the promise lifetime should exist, the caller that creates the promise. And I wasn't doing that correctly. So I ended up using a different mechanism to create the promise, which is right here. Instead of using the, what was I using before? I think like just there was a context being passed in and stuff. That ended up being wrong because the context represents the NS global window inner, which is the window that's closing, and what I want is the global of the caller, and in this case it's what's called the incumbent global. And if you're not sure what the difference is between incumbent global and other kinds of globals, and you're curious about that, there's actually a really nice piece of documentation you should read about globals and like what the difference is. And let me see if I can find it really quickly, because I found it a pretty excellent read. Where was it? I think it was like in something called, was it in a header somewhere? .h script settings, maybe it was here. Yeah, this is the documentation. So I would, if you're curious, read these things, because I found this very illuminating. Documentation that cleared up what globals were which for me. Okay, and so using get incumbent global, the test now passes properly. So that's good. I've got the test passing that I wanted to pass, and now what I want to do is I want to actually get the rest of the review feedback I've gotten cleared up. So let's see. Well, first thing I needed to do was clear up a cycle collector thing. I think I've actually done that. I'm not entirely sure that I've done it in the right way. So we have these things. Every time you call window promise document flushed, you pass it a callback and you get back a promise. And what I have is something called a promise document flush resolver, which takes the callback and the promise and like holds them. It associates one with the other, so that we have this thing that we can just say like call on that one thing, and that one thing is responsible for calling the JavaScript callback, taking the result of it, and then passing it to the promise, like resolving the promise with that result of that callback. So that's what promise document flush resolver does, and it's doing that here, and I wasn't cycle collecting it properly, and this is dead code that I can remove. And I think I'm doing it right now, but I'm not 100% sure. Let me show you what I'm doing now. So every time a window needs to cycle collect, so that means go through its children and make sure that none of its children are keeping it alive somehow by, like, you know, the promise is holding on to something, which is holding on to something, which is holding onto the window, and so there's a cycle. We have this thing that traverses the tree and finds cycles and then unlinks them and allows them to all get garbage collected to avoid memory leaks. So we have to be able to go into the promises and like traverse them. And so what I do is I'm just looping through our document flush resolvers, and I'm saying, well, traverse the promise. And I'd seen an example of that other places in the tree. So I'm doing a little bit of cargo culting here. Yeah, where was it? It was like yeah, right here. I'd seen an example of that, just like iterating through the list and then just saying, hey, release my, traverse my promise. And then similarly, you unlink it down here. It's called unlink on the promise, because the callback is not going to keep things alive, but the promise will. So I think that's done. At the very least, I'm hoping that my reviewer is going to catch me if I do things wrong there, because I should probably explain that I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing. The next thing I want to deal with is a reentrancy problem. So one of my reviewers caught this, which is that promise document flushed is, like I said, something that takes a callback, a JavaScript callback, and returns a promise. And that JavaScript callback is supposed to query the document for style and layout information. And if you need to pass it to the outer scope, then you can like return that information, and that's what the promise gets resolved with. And you know, we do that so that the you know, other JavaScript doesn't run in between the refresh driver actually ticking and the you know, the promise that we want to resolving, because other promises could have been queued up. So what we want to do then is make it so that we can call that JavaScript callback. But that JavaScript callback could, in theory, call promise document flushed again. So inside that callback, there's nothing really right now stopping it from calling promise document flushed callback inside that callback and like doing it a huge number of times or whatnot. And so there's a problem there where I think we can get into a case where we're mutating a list, because like at some point, whenever the refresh driver tick happens, we iterate through all the callbacks and fire them. But if that list is changing underneath us, maybe we're adding elements, or who knows, maybe removing elements underneath us, then you know, we are, that's not great. That's not a great situation to be in. I think that's actually a that used to be a security problem until recently, like a classic security problem, where you just like iterate using what was it called? One of these fancy new C++ for loops that like, how was it doing it? Like auto loops that just iterates, and if you're not careful, you can run off the end of the loop or something. I don't know if that's so much a danger, because you can't, you can only add. There's no API for removing things from the promise document flushed resolvers list. So I'm not so worried that there's a security problem here, but I do want to make sure that we, like, re-entrancy doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Or like having it possible to call promise document flush from within a promise document flush callback doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So what I think I want to do is make it so that you can't do that. So that's what I'm working on right now. If you look at, what is it, promise document flushed, I've recently, what have I been doing? Yeah, I've added these two new functions, call document flushed resolvers and cancel document flushed resolvers, both of which iterate the list of resolvers and either call or cancel them. And what I'm doing, wrapping each of these loops, is I'm setting this member variable, iterating document flushed resolvers to true inside it, and then false outside of it. And then I should probably assert not that. And then to make sure that somehow you can't cancel a document flushed resolver from within a call document flushed resolver and vice versa. And then the other thing I want to do is I actually need to declare this Boolean inside the did refresh. Observing did refresh bool. No, what was it? Something like iterating document flushed resolvers. This flag keeps track of whether or not we're going through promise document flushed resolvers. When true, promise document flushed cannot be called. Okay. So then what I want to do next is put the initialization of that variable here. We're going to initialize that to false. And then finally inside the promise document flushed function here, if there's no document, if there's no doc shell, I guess before any of this we'll check to see if we're iterating. We're going to throw NS error not available. What's a good error for this sort of situation? Error.h. So let's find our big list of errors and find a good one. NS error. Failure, unexpected, invalid arg, no aggregation, not available. Service not available. Failed, abort. This is binding. Error in progress. Error in progress. What does that mean? Let's look for some documentation if we can. Well, there's actually a list of error codes, and probably these general errors are ones I should be looking at. Or initialized, not implemented. That none of these sound right. Abort, cannot complete properly. That's not a bad one. It's general of all the errors and occurs for all errors which are more specific errors not apply. Unexpected. Error out of memory, illegal value, not available. So, registered, not loaded, factory exists. So, anything about re-entrancy? No, okay. Then, in that case, NS error abort. College should abort whatever action is being. Operation failed. Error abort. Either NS error abort or NS error failure. Not available. And then we'll return null pointer there. And then we need a test for that case, which we can do next. But for now, we'll throw an NS error abort. Actually, let's just, for now, let's make it NS error failure and see what the reviewers say. I don't know what the, like, why one would choose one over the other. I guess that's a clue for someone down the road. It's like, why this error code versus that error code? It's to give a clue. It's a better API if the error codes are a little more forthcoming about what went wrong. But like, choosing arbitrarily to me doesn't sound like a great idea, so I'm hoping my reviewers can like make suggestions. Okay, so that should solve the reentrancy problem, and then I needed to document a few things, and then add a test for execution order. I need to call the callbacks if the window's going away. That's already being done, and then there's some feedback on the tests that got written. So the tests are all down here, all the test to-dos. So what I'm going to do, let's suppose I've fixed the reentrancy problem, but let's not check it off yet. I'm going to write a test for reentrancy. So if I can check that, then I can check that and make it pass. If that is true, then that is true. And then, so I'll do that all on the test things. And then documentation, this is all kind of, a simple test case for execution order. Okay, so documentation, also mention execution order. So when it might throw. These two things are documentation, these things are tests. So let's actually do the test things first. And then we'll do the documentation last. And then maybe we can get, we'll mention explicitly that these are the things that we want to do as follow-ups. And then and we'll see what our reviewers think. Let's see if we can get us all to pass. So where are we in, oopsie daisy, where are we right now? So I've made some changes, but I'm on the tip of the tree and I actually need to make them earlier. Yeah, these are all within global window inner. So I'm going to do is shelve the changes, then check out this change set, unshelve, and then amend. I'm just going to do this in all one shot, and then evolve. So one after the other, go, go, go. While I'm waiting for that, take a quick sip of my Coke Zero. So how are you, dear viewer, beloved viewer? How are you? You know, let me know. Let me know in whatever chat forum you're in. If you are in the Twitch chat, how are things going? If you are not in any kind of Twitch chat, but you want to be, if you know all the places where I mentioned you could get the agenda, well, if you're watching this recording live right now, there is a link along with the agenda link to a web-based IRC client that will drop you into the live hacking channel on irc.mozilla.org, which I am paying attention to right now, and you can come say hello. I am M. Conley inside that room, and you can tell me how you're doing. Okay, so I did what I wanted. All those changes should now be in the tree, but right, hang on a second, let me pull up the graph. They should be here now. They should be in this commit. And so now I want to change some tests. So I'm going to update to here. And while I'm waiting, while I'm writing some of the new tests, I'm actually going to rebuild. And so let's have that build go through. And I'm also going to open up window, what is it? Browser promise document flushed. Is NS is error failure exception. What is the whenever you have a something throw like that, cr.exception cr.ns error failure in instance of type error if e dot result test. Reason. There's an error there. Components.return code. So you can just assert that it will throw it, and then you assert that the result is equal to it. Okay. So then I don't think I need this. I think what I can do then is just write a new test down here. So we're going to write two tests. Test that re-entering promise document flushed is not possible from within a promise document flushed callback. Okay, so let's bring this up so you can see it actually. I gotta make sure that you can see my stuff. Okay, and then I'm gonna pump up the font maybe slightly. All right, is that a little bit better? Okay. All right, add task. We're gonna write async function test PDF reentrancy. And so what we'll do is I will say let I guess I don't need to do any of this fancy stuff around like dirtying the DOM. I can just call it immediately. I'll say let promise equal or actually try. Hang on, how will this work? How will this actually work? You do like await promise equal await window.promise document flushed, and then from inside the callback what you do is you go window dot promise document flushed. Await return like assert okay false, should never run this. And this means that the promise should reject. So promise reject. What is it? Rejects? Assert rejects. Yeah, this should reject. Promise. And then how does it do it? Yeah. Assert reject, and then something that checks that x dot result equals cr dot nserror failure. Doing so will result in the outer promise rejecting with nserror failure. I think that'll work. Let's see what happens. Still building, so we're gonna have to just wait and see. So that's the first test, and then the second test we want to write. We're gonna test the expected execution order of a series of PDF promise document flushed calls, their callbacks, and the resolutions of their promises. I'm just going to test PDF execution order. Okay. So here's what I'll do. SmurfD in live hacking, #livehacking says, "Hi, feels like a Monday on this Wednesday if you know what I mean." Wink. I do know what you mean, SmurfD, and wink right back. I hear ya. Although, actually, for me, it feels more like a Tuesday because I don't know where you are in the world, but for me, Monday was a holiday. Excuse me. Oh, man. Did not mean to sneeze in your face. I apologize. I hope I was able to cover up. I didn't get any on the lens, did I? I think I covered up properly. Yeah, Monday was a holiday for me, so this feels more like a Tuesday for me. So what I'm going to do is have an array of just an empty array to start with, and then I'm going to say await. Here, I'll dirty the DOM as one expects. Here. Dirty style layout window.promise let promise 1 equal window promise document flushed. And then what I'll do is I'll say result dot push. So this is the first thing that should happen. 1. And then let promise 2 equal window promise document flushed. Result dot push 2. Dot then result dot push 3 dot then result dot push 4, and then I'm going to await promise dot all promise 1 promise 2, and then what I expect is that assert equal, now can I just do like an array comparison using assert.jsm? Will it do like the right thing? Equal Test shallow coercive equality with equal, deep equal. It's not designed to be used for probably ambiguous 2JSON. I guess I can like do a 2JSON strict equal. Okay. So I can't just like pass an array that I expect it to be like. What I'll do then is, yeah, for let I equal 0. Actually, probably do it like this. Push 0, 1, 2, 3. For I equals, let I equals 0. I is less than result.length plus plus I. Well, first of all, I should assert that I is greater than 0 should have run some of the callbacks promises. That should certainly be true. And then I'm just going to assert that result I is equal to I should have run in the expected order. Promises and callbacks and promises should have run in the expected order. And I think that'll do it. Let's see where our build is at. Holy smokes, taking a while. Jeez. Sorry. Hopefully this doesn't take too much longer. Maybe we can work on some of that documentation while we're waiting. Well, first of all, I'll document this test. Promise document flushed, or maybe I'll put it here. Promise document flushed callbacks should, or maybe I'll, you know what I'll also do is I'll put 2 more. I'll put 2 more down here. 3 and 4. Wait, promise 3, promise 4. And I'm going to say assert equal. Instead, I'll be a little more rigorous. I'll say assert result.length for should have run all callbacks and promises. We're going to push, what was it, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we should have 8. 8 in total. Should have run all callbacks and promises, and then don't need that anymore, and then we just assert that they were running in the expected order. So we expect it to run 0. So we run the callbacks first when they're in, like, they're queued up at the same time. So the callbacks should both run 0 and then 1. And they run in the order that they were queued in. So yeah, 0, then 1. And then the promise resolvers should run 2 and then 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So after this, after we wait for all those promises, these 2 promises to resolve, all this stuff should have run. And then we do the same thing over here. 4, then 5, and then 6, and then 7. We wait and make sure that all of those ran, and then we make sure that the order was right. Okay. So now what I'll do, promise document flushed callback should always run before their how about this? When multiple promise document flushed callbacks are queued, the callbacks should always be run first before any of the promises are resolved. The callbacks should run in the order that they were queued in via promise document flushed. The promise resolution should similarly run in the order that promise document flushed is called in. Okay. Uh-oh. Ruh-roh. Freaking out here. Don't have a semicolon. Ugh. Where's my semicolon? Missing my semicolon right there. And that's why my build fails. So let's try that again. But that's good. That means that I think the build's almost done if you reach that point. So those should cover the that's the test for execution order. And what was the other test feedback that I should do? Test for execution order. I've written a test for reentrancy. Make sure, whoopsie daisy, make sure test passes. He also wants a public domain header. That's a good point. So we put a license header at the top of every test. Base test. Most tests anyways. Not all tests, but I don't mind putting it here. Unit, sorry, unit. Is that right? Where is that? Browser DOM-based test. Here we go. Oh, that's Mozilla public license. We need to like, yeah, public domain license right there. Public domain. I think we can just inline the function with no comment. The documentation of the exception should be added to the description in window.webidl instead. That's a good point. So I had this handy function for doing all this business, but I can just move. I don't necessarily need this. Is not modified. I can just do X. Yeah, instance no modified. And then same here. Is not modified. So we can get rid of this. And this ends up being documentation that I might be able to use over here instead. Window.webidl. I'll just toss it here for now, figure out how to integrate it. Fixed. Obsolete references to browser test utils. Oh yeah. BTU. Test theft, the DOM is dirty that promise document flushed. Not BTU. BTU. it shouldn't have been browser test utils in the first place. It should have been browser utils, and even then, it's all wrong. Remove PDF from test function names calls test basic. That's redundant with the test file name. Also, just spell out the function name fully in code comments, since PDF definitely isn't a unique enough acronym for text searches. That's true. Call us test basic. It's redundant with the test file name. I would just always spell out the function name fully. PDF. That's fair. Okay, so test basic, test doing clean DOM throws. We don't need to test the in PDF stuff. All references to PDF can go. Test reentrancy, test execution order. Done. Just add and assert no flush pending. You can probably also set up gdom window utils once. Assert no flush pending. That's a good idea. No flushes are required. Function assert no flushes required, and then pass it a window. And what we'll do is we'll get the window DOM window utils assert. Okay, so assert no flushes required. No flushes required window. Okay. And then let's see. It needs to be flushed. No flushes required. Okay, that's good. And then what else can I do? There's probably, so he suggested that I make G window utils available to us, and that makes sense because like the one place where I use a window, yeah, I never access DOM window utils here, so I think that I can do. Const G window utils equals window so I can just do that. Style layout needs to be flushed. Style needs to be flushed. Layout needs to be flushed. Let's see. Were there any cases where window is different from current window? Doesn't look like it. So this can just use G window utils. flushes required. Then the build failed again. Let's find out. Let's find out why. Certain flushes required. We'll get rid of that. Okay. So the build failed because use of an undeclared identifier. Right, I didn't declare these two new functions I added. Whoopsie daisy. Didn't mean to close that. Global window inner.h. So it's these two private functions that I added called call document flushed resolvers and cancel. So did refresh, they're just above those. These are private functions. So I need to like put them in a private place. Public, protected, where's private? Are there any private functions here? Private. Here we go. Thaw internal. Are there any more private places? Fire on new global one. Private. 1292. 16. This is probably the more reasonable place. Void. And then cancel. All right, let's see how you like that. Meanwhile, I wonder if, like, so we do this other thing where we assert that certain types of flushes are required. It's like either everything or just style. So assert, maybe we can do like function assert style and layout flush required. And then we'll do assert OK flush layout style and layout flush required. Only style flush required. Needs flush style. Style assert it needs flush, that's true, and not the case that it needs flush for layout. Only a style flush is required. Okay, so I think we can start replacing some of these. Style and layout need to be flushed. And style, only style assert, only style flush required. Assert style and layout flush required. Okay, so then there should be layout. There shouldn't be any more uses of layout or style except for here. Great, so I can document these as well. This is still building. Ugh. But I think reduce these in the way that Paula was hoping for. So I'll mark that fixed. Looks like this wants to be similar to test basic. Probably you can just place this test next to it. Do the same check inside the callback instead of after the promise is resolved. Test during only style. Place this next to it and do the same check inside the callback instead of after the promise is resolved. Oh, I see. Test dirty only style. So what he's saying is this is very similar to test basics. So let's take a look. Let's put them side by side. Oh, right, and he wants to, yeah, okay. I think that makes sense. So we'll do this. We'll do this. Sir, no flesh is required. And we can get rid of this. Great. See my previous comment, we only return 5 instead of a weight promise is 5. Comment in the bug. We may want to test. What? Comment in the bug. We want to test return. Oh, I see. He wants to return, so we've changed one of the, we make it so that we do call the callbacks now. We're going to return a value. Despite the window not painting before closing, this callback should be fired when the window gets torn down. And should still be able to return a result. Return magic number. Assert equal expected. Let's say const expected equals 5. Or like expected equal, that's a good number. 1, 2, 3, 4. Return expected. Assert equal promise is expected. And we get rid of that. Okay. I would move this test right after test basic. Can get results from callback. Move this after test basic and add another test that calls get bound and client rect inside the callback. These are the two main use cases, and having them at the beginning of the file provides a demonstration of how the function should be used. Can we test that this doesn't trigger a synchronous reflow the same way we do in the dedicated test in the browser window? I guess so. Let's see. Element is rect and add another test that calls element get bound and client rect. Get computed style. So what we'll do is clean the DOM and then do it again. Do it again. Assert style. Then what we're going to do is get a rect window or gnav toolbox get bounding client rect. And we have to ensure that doing this doesn't involve asynchronous reflow. So how do I do this quickly and easily? And I don't care what the values of the rect are, so long as they're greater than 0. The values of the rect aren't super important, so long as they're sane, greater than 0. Super important for the purposes of this test. So checking that they're greater than 0 is probably sufficient. The actual values of this rect aren't super important for the purposes of this test, because since we just want to know that a valid rect was returned. So checking for properties being greater than 0 seems sufficient. I'm going to be a little more bold and say it is sufficient. So for let I in rect, assert okay, rect I is greater than 0. Rect property I is greater than 0. And then I'm also going to put in the actual value. And then we're going to clean the DOM, and then we're done. And for this, we need to ensure that no reflows have happened. So there is an API for this, and it works kind of like this. You get the window utils, and then you have an observer. Use let observer reflow. What was it? There's reflow and then reflow interruptible. Reflow interruptible we don't care about. As long as this implements reflow observer, flow, assert, okay, false. We should not have, reflow should not have occurred. And we'll do it actually in here. Let rect equal return rect. I think we should be able to do it in here. And then what we'll do is we'll say g window utils. What was it? Add weak reflow observer. Oh, we get down to the dock shell of the window. Window. Dock shell dot. What was it? Add weak reflow observer. Observer. Remove the observer. I think that should do it. Okay. I can't believe that's still building. I can't believe it's not butter. Okay, so that is coming at us. We return the rect. Toolbox rect. And then we get the rect out, and then we, yeah, okay. I think that's good. And then I think the way that the reflow observers work is that they're called immediately, right? Like, reflow observer. Notify reflow observers. When does that occur? That occurs if it's synchronously when the reflow occurs and not inside some runnable. Oh yeah, this is what I wanted. Did do reflow. We go through the list and then we notify. So that's good. That'll work. Okay. Another error. What is wrong with you? Error variable has incomplete type. Void. What? Global window. I said void. Yeah. Void. Void. Oh. Yeah, this. I didn't give it the old parens. We gotta be close to being done building. So that addresses all of Paolo's test feedback, which is good. So I'm going to check that off the list. Need to make sure that the test passes that I wrote, and if so, then we fix the reentrancy problem, and then it's all about documentation, and then I think we've got something we can put up for another round of review. I'm gonna open a window. I'm just curious how just maybe this is a vanity check. How many people are watching the Twitch stream right now, and how many people are watching the YouTube stream? Hang on, gotta mute. 4 people are watching me on Twitch. Hello, you 4. Nice to see ya. How about on YouTube? Apparently 11. Oh wow, 11 people. Hello, folks. Nice to see you. And I have no idea how many people are watching on Airmozilla. I don't really get that information. But hello. I'm just curious. So what's going on? Like, let's get this build done, right? I guess we can work on the documentation while we're waiting. And also, what are these open things that we're still on this? The review over here. What if the shell? Yeah. I need to. Well, I haven't actually. Sorry, I should unmark that as not fixed. That's part of the documentation effort. So I have to unfix that. Reopen. And that's true. Well, I'm gonna fix this because the shell is no longer being passed around. So so what I'm gonna do is now work on some documentation. And all that documentation is gonna happen over here in window.webidl. Calls the given function as soon as a style or layout flush for the top level document is not necessary and returns a promise which resolves to the callback's return value after it execute. The function must not make any changes. The callback function must not make any changes which would require a style or layout flush. If it does, the promise will reject. The promise will resolve if the window goes away before a flush can occur. The promise can also resolve. Call the callbacks. Promise will also. The callback after it executes. The callback might, in the event that the window goes away before the flush can occur, the callback will still be called. And the promise resolved as the window tears itself down. The callback throws essay after the west. Execution order. The callback might be called synchronously if the document, if no flushes are currently pending, are already pending, synchronously when calling promise document. It's not might, will. Callback will be called synchronously when calling promise document flushed when no flushes are already pending. This is to ensure that no script can dirty the DOM in between the time that promise document time in between the time that no script has a chance to dirty the DOM before the callback is called. Similarly, execution order. In a similar, or hold on a second, the callback will be called asynchronously if a flush is pending. Note that execution order that the expected execution order is that all callbacks, pending callbacks, will be fired first and in the order that they were queued, and then the promise resolution, the promises will resolve with the results later on during the next micro task. Checkpoint. Promise document flushed is not expected. Does not support re-entrancy. Calling it from within a promise document flushed callback will result in the outer promise rejecting, will result in the inner call throwing an exception and the outer promise rejecting with that exception, throwing an NS error failure exception and the outer promise rejecting with that exception. Promise will reject with a what was the not modified, not modified, no modification allowed error. What was it? Come on. No modification allowed. DOM exception. Also throws if the Windows non-stable flushes can be waited for. Okay. So I think I covered this part there. So have I addressed the documentation? So yeah, if a shell hasn't been created yet, when flushes can, for example, the pres shell has not yet been created. So document, or a couple places. Documentation. Documented. I guess I just feel like things that sometimes render usync and sometimes async compare work. At the very least, this behavior should be clear. Needs to be clearly documented. Note that the callback can be called either synchronously or asynchronously, depending on whether or not flushes are pending. No flushes are already pending. This to ensure the call if a flush is pending. This will be fired first, and then probably during the next microtask checkpoint. Called asynchronously if a flush is pending. The expected execution order is that all pending callbacks will be fired first, and in the order that they were queued, and then the promises will resolve with the results later on during, hang on. Yeah. I think that feels okay. How's this here build going? Come on, I feel like I've been building for most of this episode. This is destroying me here. Destroying my, to avoid the possibility of resolving first. Possibility that other promises promise resolution handlers is what it should be called. And then the promise resolution handlers will all be called at the will be all be invoked later on during the next microtask checkpoint. Okay. Oh, you know what? My modifying window.webidl is probably not helping here. Even though I'm just changing the commentary, it's probably caused me to like, darn it, I'm probably rebuilding a ton of stuff every time I modify it and do rebuild. Shoot. All right. Well, I think that's it for the documentation changes. And if that's, let me just double check here. How a function might be called synchronously, maybe asynchronously, and why we run the callbacks, avoid promises, running a microtask queue. Also mention execution order. No scratch chance during the DOM for the callback is called. I think I did that. About when it might throw, I think I did that too. So if I can get these tests to pass, then I think we're done. So now we just have to wait for the build to finish and we can run our tests and figure out how we're doing. Let's check in. So Smurf D says, I usually creep at air mods, but the last 2 episodes I've had to watch on YouTube because I got spinner on air mods after a while. Something to do with maybe the connection. I don't know, Air Mozilla being a little freaky. We're switching to a new Air Mozilla soon. A new Air Mozilla that will hopefully be better. The old Air Mozilla served us well, but I think has run its course. So there's a new one coming, and it will be good. Apparently the show stream on Air Mozilla has been buffering like mad and is low quality, according to people on the internet. Whoopsie daisy. So sorry about that. Hopefully it hasn't been too bad. But one of these days we're switching over to new Airmo and this won't be an issue anymore. Okay, so what can we do while we wait? I guess I'll quickly scan to make sure that since my latest patch there isn't other feedback that I've skipped. So let's go back through the feedback. $14 days ago. That's so. When was most recent version of my patch? It was. Oh, okay. So here are the follow-ups that, like, I'm gonna see if I can collect things that should be in the MVP and other stuff for follow-ups. So I'm gonna work from here forward because this is whenever I added the new patches. 3 more edge cases that occurred to me. Add test to make sure that 2 or more consecutive invocations of promise talking flash for all the provide callbacks being called first, and that the promise resolution callbacks being called afterwards. Might be the case now because the current promise scheduling, if I remember correctly, we're adding more microtask checkpoints, meaning that this behavior may break in the future. Okay, so that's why we add that test. So that's done. Secondly, if one of the callbacks required a flush, currently raise an exception for all the subsequent callbacks. To avoid this, we either need check whether need flush is already true before invoking each callback, change the code structure and keep a corresponding flag around while we set through the invocations, or pause the invocations, wait for the next refresh driver tick when this situation occurs. We should have a test for this too. If one of the callbacks required a flush, we currently raise an exception for all the subsequent callbacks. To avoid this, we may either check whether need flush is already true before invoking each callback, change the code structure, and keep a corresponding flag around, which will cycle through the invocations. Okay, so we did this first, and we did this last, which is reentrancy. The second one is new. So let me Paulo's note about, what was it? Exception propagation, I guess is what I'll call it. I'll put that there. Is there anything you want me to do before asking for reviews? Yeah, blocking. I'm struggling with a test failure. Yeah. This is what I was working with last week. And then can assert that affixed. Error may have already exception. Okay, yep, did that. Doing traverse 2, yep, doing that. Address this. Lifetime process of the callers global. And that was in global inner. Did I address that? Callers. Yes, I did. So it should be callers. Yeah, callers global. That way, if the window we're observing refresh ticks on. Yeah. Having this in callback here is pretty weird from my point of view. Probably not, and it did refresh notification. Yeah, so I got rid of that. Each of this calls run script synchronously after first thing to go to that shell is still alive. So I got rid of shell, thankfully. So why do we have the sync callback? We just want to differentiate between refresh start ticked. What seems unrelated? Why is this needed? Like cube, so probably consumer might wrap process which is reasonable. I think it's probably not pointer. So I respond to a bunch of this. Flag. I have a few return questions. I guess my past experience is certain things. I guess we can try out debug builds. Let's have a concrete example. Do you have a call throw because the trash will we talk as soon as the flush down every this one avoid running JS at the time we're not queued up. Re-entries are pretty hard to work with, clearly documented. So okay, reading style in general flushes layout on the parent, which can trigger resize and arbitrary script execution. Okay, yeah, I need to prevent this forbid it from occurring on iframes. That was this one. That's a follow-up bug. Non-obvious. All the pending callbacks probably will be called first. All the promised resolution has to be invoked afterwards. In fact, the promised resolution will very likely modify the DOM. That's why we need both synchronous callback and resolution promise. So we'll test. Test case for this too. It looks like this can become a test case 2. A test for that case that was down here. In any case, you think that's worth the first one to do. Don't want to assert again for the empty calls, even raise an exception for what it's worth. If you want an assertion, it should be logically placed near the error error.throw DOM exception call, and it should be fired even if the callback raised a different exception. If an assertion aligned. Yeah, okay, so I fixed that one already. The for loop variable should be called inside, called document flush resolver, and I did that too. If it dirtied the DOM and then called get bound client rec, the exception would not be thrown. The assertion would not fire. This should be easy to copy and test for synchronous reflows, though. Okay, that's true. So in this case, which may likely raise exception, yeah, I did that. Yep, did that. Yep, and I addressed all of the test feedback. And then file a places bug and references here. We like to know this doesn't work now, so file places bug for Paulo's comment here. And we should probably have a bug on file for converting get bounds without flushing calls inside promise document flush call accident standards client get bound and client rec calls. Okay, that's true. I suppose we have to find a balance here. What is this times to know whether they're during it? Depends on what they do exactly. You know, what JS ran before them. Yeah, it's possible. Guess let's do that. Thanks. Wouldn't use models diagnostics or something. So we should fail rich test. So we should have a press. And it would use a mutation observer and or a reflow observer to check for issues during the execution of callback. This would be able to catch an additional class of behavior like the one I mentioned in comment 64. For details on which mutation caused the issue, I actually recommend filing server bug for adding these diagnostics. File a bug for diagnostics that Paolo suggests in this comment. Good. Okay. Wow, still building. This is taking forever. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. It's 2:26. I need to get wrapped up soon. I don't want this to go any longer than 2:30. So if this is not done within 3 minutes, I'm just gonna bail. I'm just gonna have to. You're just gonna have to believe or hope that the tests worked out fine. But I'm pretty much gonna have to cap it there because I have to give up this room and stuff and all sorts of things. So actually, maybe I should give up the room now. Hang on. Need this room? In 5 minutes? Okay, so yeah, I do need to give up this room. So I actually, and in order to tear this stuff down, that takes a couple minutes. So I actually have to end now. I'm going to call it, I don't have like a referee's whistle, but I'll play an air horn. That's almost like a referee's whistle. But I'm using that as like the finish sound, there you go. So I'm going to call it here. Thank you so much for watching episode, what was it? 129 of The Joy of Coding. I hope that was interesting. We got through some review feedback and cleaned up this patch, and hopefully we'll be able to test it soon. We'll see once this build finishes. Keep watching that bug if you're curious, and that'll be done hopefully shortly. Okay, in that case, I will see you next week. Have yourselves a great week. Take care. Don't forget to rate this episode. Let me know what you thought. Take care. Bye-bye. The joy of coding. See ya.